Hello and welcome to the Agri-Food and Biosciences Institute. My name is Paul Cotney, and today in collaboration with CAFRI we'll be looking at some of the cereal variety trials which are funded by the AHDB. These trials are part of the recommended list trialling process, with the data generated going into the UK database and being used to produce the recommended lists. We will be showing some of the recommended key current varieties and those which are new.
Today we'll be looking at the winter barley varieties and talking about some of their attributes. This will hopefully help you decide what is the most suitable variety to your needs and management. There are two new 2-row varieties and two new 6-row varieties on the recommended list. I will focus on the varieties yield, straw strength and disease resistance. Next up then, we will look at the 2-row feed winter barley varieties, where we have Tardis, which is a very high treated yield of 105 and a high untreated yield of 85. Tardis performs well in heavy soils with a yield of 109, which is the highest of all 2-row varieties. This could be of high interest therefore to Northern Ireland. In addition, when PGR is applied, it also has a shorter straw, which gives it an excellent standing power, rated at 8. It has a good resistance to Rhynchosporium, rated a 7, but a lower resistance of both 5 for mildew and net blotch. Bolton has a yield of 104 and untreated yield of 84. With PGR, it is the shortest of all varieties with a height of 83 centimeters. It is rated a 6 for mildew and brown rust and is rated a 5 for net blotch and Rhynchosporium resistance. Lightning is a new variety recommended this year with a very high treated and untreated yield. Lightning has the highest untreated yield of 88 and gives a yield penalty of 16% when fungicides are not used. It has the highest resistance to mildew and brown rust with both 5s for Rhynchosporium and net blotch. Bordeaux, first recommended in 2021, has a treated yield of 103 and an untreated yield of 81%. This gives a yield penalty of 22%. It performs well in heavy land, rated 105% of controlled varieties. It has a specific weight of 70.7 kilograms per hectolitre. Bordeaux has a very good resistance to lodging due to its short straw, with its standing power rated at 8. In terms of disease aim, Bordeaux has a low resistance to Rhynchosporium, rated at 4, which is its weakest notable attribute. So far we have limited data on its resistance to net blotch, but is currently rated at a 5. LG Dazzle is a newly recommended variety this year and has an excellent untreated yield of 87 and a treated yield of 103, which is a yield penalty of 15%. It has a specific weight of 68.9, which is relatively low in comparison to other varieties on the recommended list. LG Dazzle has a strong disease resistance to both brown rust and Rhynchosporium. However, it is currently rated a 4 for resistance to net blotch, which is the lowest of all winter barley varieties in the recommended list. LG Mountain has a treated yield of 102% and an untreated yield of 82%. It has a lower resistance to lodging, rated at 6. When it receives PGR, it has a short straw at 92 centimeters, but despite this is very prone to brackling, which is rated at 27%. LG Mountain is early to mature. It has a good all-round disease resistance package. However, it has its straw strength and proneness to brackling which lets it down. The next variety is KWDS Hawking, which was first recommended in 2020. It has a treated yield of 101 and an untreated yield of 81%. It has a good all-round disease resistance package, rated at 5 for mildew, and 6s for brown rust, net blotch, and rhynchosporium. In addition, it has a good resistance to lodging. The variety Surge has a treated yield of 101% and an untreated yield of 87%. This gives a yield penalty of 14% where fungicides are not used. This high untreated yield is due to a good disease resistance package in terms of resistance to mildew and excellent resistance to rhynchosporium and a lower resistance to net blotch rated at 5. KWDS Orwell, first listed in 2016, has a good treated yield of 100 and an untreated yield of 80. This gives it a yield penalty of 20% where fungicides are not used. It has a reasonable disease resistance package to brown rust, net blotch, and rhynchosporium. However, it is rated at 3 for mildew, which is the lowest of all varieties on the trials, which means it's highly susceptible. Its specific weight is relatively low in comparison to other varieties. Valerie has a treated yield of 99 and an untreated yield of 82%. It has a good standing power and a good disease resistance to mildew, rhyncho, and net blotch. It is also early to mature. The variety California, first listed in 2013, has a treated yield of 98 and an untreated yield of 79%. This is a penalty of 19%. In terms of grain quality, it has quite a low hectoliter weight at 68.8 in comparison to other varieties. It has quite a good disease package despite its quite low untreated yield. KWS Kasia, first listed in 2010, has a treated yield of 97% and an untreated yield of 81%. This gives it a yield penalty of 16%. It retains its title of unrivaled grain quality due to high specific weight of 72.1, which is unmatched by any other variety listed. It has a high resistance to brown rust rated at 7 and 5s for mildew, net blotch, and rhynchosporium. It continues to be a consistent performer and provides good grain quality, which is key for animal feed in Northern Ireland. Moving on to the 6-row barleys now. Thunderbolt is the first variety up with a yield of 107% and an untreated yield of 87%. This gives a yield penalty of 19%. In terms of disease, it has excellent resistance to mildew, rated at 8, and its resistance to net blotch, rhyncho, and brown rust is rated at 6. However, with this variety, caution must be applied as a robust PGR program is required due to it being a tall variety. Its resistance to lodging is rated at 5, which is one of the lowest of all varieties. With and without PGR, the recommended list shows that it has a high percentage of the crop lodged and brackled. Therefore, caution must be used when sowing this variety. SY Kingsborn is a 6-row barley with a treated yield of 106%, which is very high, and an untreated yield of 84%. This gives a yield penalty of 22%. It has a good resistance to mildew, rated at 7, and also good resistance to brown rust, rhynchosporium, and net blotch, which are all rated at 6. It has a reasonable standing power and quite a high specific weight. Next up we have SY Canyon, which is another 6-row barley. It is a newly recommended variety with a yield of 106 and an untreated yield of 89. This untreated yield is the highest amongst all varieties on the list. It gives it a yield penalty of 17%. In addition, in the West region, its yield is 108, which makes it one of the highest of all varieties. It has a good resistance to mildew, rated at 8. Its resistance to brown rust and rhynchosporium is rated at 6, with a bit more susceptibility to net blotch, rated at 5. It also has the highest specific weight of all 6-row varieties at 71.2, which shows it has good grain quality. SY Kingston has a yield of 106 and an untreated yield of 88. Without PGR, it is a very tall variety, with the straw height being 26 centimeters in the shortest 2-row barley. As a result, this negatively affects the standing power, whereby a robust PGR program is needed. It has a good disease package, rated at 7 for resistance to mildew, and rated for 6s for both brown rust, rhynchosporium, and net blotch. The variety Belmont is another 6-row feed barley with a high treated yield of 106%, however a low untreated yield of 76%. This gives a high yield penalty where fungicides are not used of 29%. In terms of disease, it is quite susceptible to mildew and net blotch, rated at 5. Its resistance to brown rust is very low, rated at 4, but is quite resistant to rhynchosporium, rated at 7. The variety Belmont is also quite susceptible to straw breakdown, as it has quite a bit of brackling. The variety Belfry has a treated yield of 104% and a very high untreated yield of 87%. This gives a yield penalty of 17% where fungicides are not used. It performs excellently on heavy soils, having one of the highest yields of all 6-row varieties. However, in terms of grain quality, it has a low specific weight and the highest level of screenings compared to all other varieties. The variety Bazooka is another 6-row barley with a high treated yield of 104 and a good untreated yield of 84%. It has a lower disease resistance package in comparison to some of the newer 6-rows, with ratings of 5 for mildew, net blotch and rhynchosporium. To summarise then, this year we have 4 new recommended varieties on the list. Overall, the highest yielding 2-row variety is KWDS Tardis, whereas for the 6-rows, SY Thunderbolt and SY Canyon share the spot for highest yield in the West region. SY Thunderbolt is a riskier variety to grow due to its low straw strength. In 2022 we saw high levels of winter barley diseases in the trials across the Creevy, but much lower levels in the trials at Limavady. I would like to emphasise the importance of choosing varieties on their untreated yield. With the rise of input prices has increased the risks and challenges associated with crop production. Therefore, varieties with good disease resistance help give insurance against high disease pressure years and also catchy weather leading to later than ideal spray timings. In 2022, ideal spray conditions were limited due to the wind, which resulted in delayed applications. The highest yielding untreated variety was SY Lightning, followed by LG Dazzle, and in terms of the 6-rows was SY Canyon and Funky. KWDS Ferris is an exciting variety due to its high grain quality and because of its genetic resistance to BYDV. This has not yet been validated by the AHDB trials. However, with more erratic and milder winter means these traits are important to integrated pest management. BYDV was prevalent in many winter barley crops this year and caused serious yield penalties and also severe inefficiency of inputs. I'd like to thank you for listening and hope this helps you make up your mind of what variety to choose for this coming year.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for watching today's video. I hope you found it useful. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank AFBI staff for taking the time to set up the plots and prepare them for today's video. I would also like to thank AHDB for their continued support and funding of the recommended list trials within Northern Ireland. You will find more information on the AHDB website on any of the varieties mentioned today and others as well. And there you'll also find their variety selection tool where you can dig into the information on the varieties in more detail. If you want more convenience, you can download the AHDB recommended list app onto your phone and you can have the details with you at any time. So those are useful tools to have. So I'd like to thank you very much once again and hope you found the video useful and wish you all a successful harvest. Thank you.